Jai, Hare Krishna. So, tonight is definitely a Bhagavad-gītā night. Reading in the morning and chanting, and reading in the evening and chanting. The last couple evenings we've just been reading some pastime scriptures. Not so much the philosophy, but more the pastimes, of what's going on in the spiritual world. But tonight's a good night for Bhagavad-gītā. Get a refresher, get refreshed with the philosophy as spoken by Krishna himself. So, pick up where we left off. Text 64, chapter 2, text 64, contents of the Bhagavad-gītā summarized. And Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskitari Satarni. So, hearing about the Lord and hearing from the Lord. This is devotional service, hearing the messages of Godhead. So, text 64. One who can control his senses by practicing the regulated principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord and thus become free from all attachment and aversion. Prabhupada's commentary. It's already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he's transcendental to all attachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of being attached to sensual platform. And that's interesting. I was thinking today how can we please Krishna? What can we do to serve Krishna? And then I was remembering, I asked an old Jewish woman one time, a little old lady, she's like close to 90. And I asked her, I said, I wanted to hear what she had to say. I said, what does it mean that the Jewish people are the chosen people? And she said, they're chosen to serve God. So I wanted to hear more about that. So I asked her, well, what is that service? She looked at me like I was the stupidest thing there was and said, whatever he asks you to do. And that's a good answer. That's a very good answer, because what is a servant? A servant fulfills the orders and the desires of their master. So, we're asking, when we chant Hare Krishna, we're asking, please engage me in your service, please engage me in your service. So what is that service? It's whatever Krishna wants you to do. If we're not on the pure platform where we're fully hearing Krishna completely telling us exactly what to do, if we haven't become purified enough to be able to hear Krishna like that and enter into that kind of relationship with the Lord, we need the via media. We need his pure representative to help us be able to hear Krishna. The pure representative of the Lord is the external manifestation of the Lord. The Lord is within the heart of everyone. So, but because of all the contamination within the heart of a conditioned soul, bewildered by the material energy, can't really hear Krishna very well. It's a lot of static in there, a lot of other things going on, desires, and so the desire to serve Krishna and hear what Krishna wants is just blocked, really. But when we hear from his pure representative, who is in contact with Krishna, they can engage us in Krishna's service. And first and foremost is hearing from them. We have to hear from such a person, and then render service. They direct us in service, in devotional activities. Inquire from that person, and then our own ability to communicate with Krishna starts to develop, because the representative, that's that person's service to Krishna, is to help others be reinstated in their own devotional service to the Lord. So it's until we're at that point, we can follow some very general instructions also, to hear and chant and remember Krishna, offer all activities to Krishna, can be engaged in devotional activities, and keep a desire to serve the Lord, to love the Lord, to please the Lord. And at some point, the Lord will actually tell us what he wants us to do, person to person, individually. But that's on the pure devotional platform. Until then, we can practice in different ways and take shelter of those who are on a pure devotional platform. Krishna is directing them what to do, and they are Krishna's pure servant, and they are doing what Krishna is asking them to do. And that's pleasing Krishna. So, if Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. And if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts only in the direction of Krishna. So Arjuna is hearing this directly from the Lord, and because he is a soul surrendered to Krishna, Krishna is asking him to do something that Arjuna ordinarily wouldn't want to do. He's asking him to lead a battle that Arjuna really sees no benefit for himself or others, but it's what Krishna wants. Krishna wants it. So, because there's a bigger plan. So Arjuna's going to be surrendering as a servant of the Lord, doing something that he ordinarily wouldn't want to do, but doing it to please Krishna. Text 65. This is Krishna speaking. For one who is so situated in divine consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such a happy state, one intelligent becomes steady. So by serving Krishna, following Krishna, what Krishna wants the devotee to do, they're no longer under the jurisdiction of the modes of material nature. They're actually happy. No anxiety. Text 66. One who is not in transcendental consciousness can have neither a controlled mind nor steady intelligence, without which there's no possibility of peace. How can there be any happiness without peace? Prabhupada's commentary. Unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there's no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, and that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. And when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace, however much one may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. Disturbance is due to the want of an ultimate goal. Now, God consciousness, that's kind of a general, it's a very general way of understanding the Supreme Being, God. But who is God? What is his personality like? What are his activities? How do I have a relationship with God? It's not a very descriptive, it doesn't give a whole lot of information. It refers to the Supreme Being as all-powerful, and all-knowing, and the creator of everything. That's there. But in Krishna, when we understand that Krishna is God, then we can really find shelter, because we know who he is, we know what his personality is, we know his activities, because he's revealing in his manifestation as Krishna. He reveals his intimate nature as a person, and a loving relationship takes place between people. So to have a loving relationship with the great unknown, it really doesn't work. So the ultimate goal is Krishna, loving relationship with the Lord, persons, through devotional service, the spiritual atmosphere, spiritual realm, free of the material contamination. So disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. That's why hearing about Krishna really fixes the mind, gives the mind the goal. The goal is to remember Krishna, to think of Krishna, to be Krishna conscious. to engage in Krishna conscious activities. And when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then can have a steady mind. And then there's peace. Know what the goal is. Not only is there peace, but then one can put full energy behind reaching the goal. Steady determination. All doubts, there's no doubts. All doubts are gone. So, Prabhupada says, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is in distress and without peace, however much one may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement. And he makes a further point that this is self-manifested. It's not something imposed from outside. It's the natural condition of the spirit soul is to be in a loving relationship with the Supreme Spirit Soul. So when the purification is there, then that natural condition of the living entity comes out. It's self-manifested. But it's only in relationship with Krishna, because there's no one greater than Krishna, no one equal to Krishna, no one more beautiful than Krishna, or more wealthy, or more famous, or stronger, or more renounced. It's the Supreme Person, Krishna. Everything's there in Krishna. All knowledge, all beauty, everything. Who wouldn't be attracted to Krishna? Text 67. And this is Krishna speaking. As a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind, even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Prabhupada's commentary. Unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Ambarish, all the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind. When chanting Hare Krishna mantra on beads, 3 out of 5 of the senses are forcibly engaged in Krishna consciousness. Hearing, chanting, and hearing, speaking, and touching, because touching the bead. So of the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and sense of touch, 3 out of the 5 are engaged in the goal, Krishna. So, because it's a majority of the senses, then the mind can be focused. It still struggles to go here and there and everywhere, but because 3 out of the 5 of the senses are engaged in Krishna, 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 then, so that's the science behind chanting the Maha Mantra on beads, is that 3 out of 5 senses, the majority of the knowledge-acquiring senses, are focused on the same thing, Krishna. But ultimately, all the senses have to be engaged in Krishna consciousness. Smelling, seeing, you have to become purified. It's like Krishna says, it's like a strong wind. Even one of the senses can carry away intelligence. I want to eat this thing over here. or want to hear this sense gratification over here or there. It pulls one away. Therefore, O mighty armed one, whose senses are restrained from their objects, is certainly of steady intelligence. As enemies are curbed by superior force, similarly, the senses can be curbed, not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called sadhaka, or a suitable candidate for liberation. So the senses are not curbed by any human endeavor. By keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord under the direction of the bona fide spiritual teacher. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. There are two classes of intelligent men. The one is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of the introspective sage or thoughtful man are night for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of the materialistic men. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy, sometimes distressed in his sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reaction. Bhagavad-gītā is the basics of spiritual life, to be able to distinguish what is spiritual from what is material. Be able to make that distinction. It's very important. Really can't go anywhere until that is realized. The difference between matter and spirit. What is conscious and what is not conscious. That is the first step in self-realization. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So we have a little indication here that peacefulness means not stopping desires, because they enter like rivers into the ocean. The desires are always coming. But the person who's peaceful doesn't strive to satisfy these desires. It's like they come and they go. He doesn't have to act on them. He doesn't have to try to satisfy them. They don't have that kind of a pull on that person. They never get to the point of feeling and willing. Never develops attachment for satisfying different desires. So he's not disturbed. And how is that possible? He's already busy. He doesn't have time for it. What is he busy with? He's busy with Krishna. He doesn't have time for these. They're like disturbances. They come, little disturbances. He doesn't have time for them. He's fully engaged in Krishna's service. So there's no room for them. Of course, here the example is they're like rivers entering into the ocean. Because the ocean is so big, the ocean's not disturbed by the little river coming with its little bit of water there. Because the ocean is so vast. So Krishna is like a vast ocean. If we're engaged in Krishna, then these desires, these different material desires, they're very insignificant. They're not a disturbance. Certainly not worth putting any attention or effort into. They just come and they go. Okay, Prabhupada's comment. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady. It's not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna-conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he's like the ocean. He's always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities. And he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna-conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains fully satisfied in transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean, and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruitive workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, therefore they're in perfect peace. Nice. Text 71. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Prabhupada's commentary. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself, and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world, is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, therefore everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense gratification, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. Desire for the satisfaction of Krishna is really desirelessness. It is not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna. Isavasyamidam sarvam. Therefore, he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely, knowing perfectly well that every living entity is the eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and therefore the eternal position of the living entity is never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. Everything belongs to Krishna. Every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. No one is ever greater than Krishna or equal to Krishna. So desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, to do what Krishna wants you to do, that's real peace. What could be more harmonious than that? Be perfectly in tune with the Lord of everything and everyone. How could you possibly go wrong? Just got to get rid of that static on the wire, the static on the line. It's coming from contact with the material energy. Contact with the material energy, and then different desires arise for sense gratification, and the mind gets involved. And if the intelligence isn't functioning nicely, trying to direct the living entity toward accepting what's favorable for serving Krishna and rejecting what isn't, then there's a lot of static on the line. Can't hear what Krishna wants. Can't even think of Krishna. Not even sure Krishna exists. Who needs Krishna? I can enjoy. I can control things. I'm as good as Krishna. I might even be better than Krishna. Who even knows if he exists? Who cares? Down into forgetfulness of one's own spiritual nature, and down into the material body. (72) That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. Being so situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. We don't know when that hour is going to be. Could be any moment. And the goal is to enter into the kingdom of God. So, we want that spiritual and godly life. Prabhupada's commentary. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second. Or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It's only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Khatvanga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering to Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there's only void after the completion of this material life. But Bhagavad-gītā teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there's another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There's no difference between the kingdom of God and devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane. To be engaged in the transcendental, loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. One who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmistiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in Bhagavad-gītā as the liberated stage. Therefore, Brahmastiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized this second chapter of Bhagavad-gītā as being the contents for the whole text. In the Bhagavad-gītā, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the contents for the complete text. And that is the end of the second chapter of Bhagavad-gītā, with the Bhaktivedanta purports in the matter of its contents. So we can go on to the third chapter, which is entitled Karma Yoga. So now the Lord will go into more detail. He briefly discussed Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Now he's going to discuss in more depth Karma Yoga. Text 1. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you urge me to engage in this ghastly warfare, if you think that intelligence is better than fruit of work? Now, that's a good question. Plus, Arjuna really doesn't want to fight this particular war. Prabhupada's commentary. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to deliver his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddha Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it's not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddha Yoga as intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge, as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or work, in Krishna consciousness in the 3rd chapter. Text 2. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Please, therefore, tell me decisively what is most beneficial for me. Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to Bhagavad-gītā, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddha Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruit of desire, position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna therefore wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any juggling of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness either by inertia or active service. In other words, by his questions he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of Bhagavad-gītā. The Blessed Lord said, O sinless Arjuna, I've already explained that there are 2 classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others are inclined to know him by devotional work. Prabhupada's commentary. In the 2nd chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained 2 kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddha Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it is explained in the 61st verse of the 2nd chapter. The Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddha Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action. Furthermore, there's no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddha Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically on Krishna, and in this way all the senses can be brought under control very easily. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent, as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, and sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna. Because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching for the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness, this is also stated in the Bhagavad-gītā. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super-self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting with everything in Krishna consciousness. Of these 2, the path of Krishna consciousness is better, because it does not depend on purifying the senses by philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. Text 4. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. The renounced order of life can be accepted upon being purified by the discharge of prescribed form of duties which are laid down to purify the heart of materialistic men. Without purification, one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting the fourth order of life, sannyas. According to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyas, or retiring from fruitive activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayan. But Lord Krishna does not approve this principle. Without purification of heart, sannyas is simply a disturbance to the social order. On the other hand, if someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord, Buddha Yoga. Swapam apyasya dharmasya trate mahatovayat. Even a slight performance of such a principle enables one to overcome great difficulties. The transcendental truth always is more significant than the procedures or the external rules or regulations, because those things are meant to serve the transcendental truth. That's why if one reaches a point where the heart is purified, like here, except a renounced order can be accepted upon being purified by the discharge of prescribed duties, then it is always that transcendental truth is the highest truth. It's Krishna, Personality of Godhead, devotional service. Without the devotion, whatever one may be practicing really doesn't reach the goal. So the idea of the becoming purified is to be able to discharge pure devotional service. And sometimes people try to jump ahead and accept positions for the sake of accepting the position. So that's a contamination. And it's just, Prabhupada says, it's just a disturbance to society. And we heard before in the previous verse that Krishna consciousness is self-manifested when the necessary purification has taken place. And here Krishna is showing two different paths. Some people are inclined to try to understand everything philosophically, speculation, like this. And they're inclined like that. And others are inclined to take up a path of devotional activity with full faith that by acting on behalf of Krishna that they will become purified. And Prabhupada says here both processes work. Ultimately they both come to Krishna. One is called Sankhya Yoga, or philosophical approaching through philosophy, and the other is through active work. And they both have the same effect when they're done in devotional service, with the goal being love of God, Krishna. When they're done for the satisfaction of Krishna. Just like work done not for the satisfaction of Krishna simply binds one to the material world, and philosophical speculation not for the satisfaction of Krishna binds one to the material conception of life. They never reach a conclusion. And the work done, not in Krishna consciousness, not for the satisfaction of the Lord, is not satisfying anyway. Because the fruits of such labor don't last. So, whereas somebody who's working in Krishna consciousness, even if the goal isn't reached of the particular work that they're doing, they still get the benefit of working for Krishna, even if the fruit didn't come for some reason. Because at every step of the way, they were working in Krishna consciousness. It was devotional activity. They get the benefit because they were acting as a servant of the Lord. Try to please the Lord. That's an interesting sentence here. If someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord. See, that shows the super excellent position of devotional service. He's not even discharging his prescribed duties. But if he's engaging in the transcendental service of the Lord, and what is that transcendental service? Hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, making friends with, serving the lotus feet, worshipping, and offering everything. So that's the transcendental devotional service. So if someone has the great good fortune to be able to engage on that level, service on that level, Krishna's not so worried, concerned that they might not be doing their prescribed duties. Because the prescribed duties are meant to bring someone to the level where they can do transcendental devotional service. So they're already engaging, they kind of like got an honorary PhD. And not to be imitated. But it is explained here that you can see the super excellent position of devotional service, transcendental devotional service to the Lord, supersedes all duties. And that's also what Arjuna is experiencing, because he's looking, oh, what about my duties? You know, my responsibilities to I will be responsible for so much suffering if I fight in this. He's confused about his duty. His prescribed duty was to fight. It was very confusing for Arjuna. That's why he's surrendering to Krishna here. Please, I'm confused. I don't know what my duty is. My duty is to fight, but the outcome of this fighting goes against everything that I hold sacred and dear. I don't understand. So it's interesting, because Krishna says, he could have said, don't worry about your prescribed duties. Just surrender to me and chant, and yes, go to the forest and meditate on me. I mean, he could have said that. But he didn't. He said, no, do your prescribed duty and fight. I want you to. So, transcendental devotional service coincided with what the prescribed duties were. Could not separate. For Arjuna at this point, Krishna did not, there's no distinction between your prescribed duty and transcendental devotional service. And I'll be right there with you while you're fighting. As a matter of fact, I'm going to guide your chariot. I'll be right there with you. So that's interesting. It's interesting. that's when it's not karma yoga anymore. It's performing prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness. It's not karma yoga anymore. It's bhakti yoga. Because of the pure nature, the pure consciousness. And that's what Arjuna wanted. He wanted that pure consciousness. He didn't want to just do karma yoga. He wanted bhakti. And that was why he approached Krishna. He wanted bhakti. He didn't want to fight like it was just karma yoga. He wanted bhakti yoga. He wanted to fight knowing that he was pleasing Krishna. And Krishna gave him that. He gave him that. Wow. Hare Krishna. So, like that little old Jewish woman said, yeah, the Jewish people are chosen people because they're meant to serve God, and the service to God is whatever He wants you to do. And it's interesting. She had the right conclusion. Whatever He wants you to do, that's a service to God. Hare Krishna. Where's the Prabhupada?